So this school year is actually coming to a close, if not already, for some children because I'm here in the state of Georgia. And so my daughter's last day of school was May the 22nd. And so she's been out of school for a few weeks. And so I know maybe for other people that may be early for you. So your kids may be just getting out of school this month or maybe later this month in June. And over the last few weeks, I was thinking about when my kids were small, right? And I'm referring to ages 4 and 8. And at that time, when they were 4 and 8, their dad had moved out of the state of Georgia. Okay, he moved out of the state of Georgia. He actually moved to Washington State, right? So not Washington D.C., but Washington State. So we're talking about on the other side of the United States. And by that time, we were divorced going on 2 years. And with his first year being gone, I remember, and this was in 2012. When this was his first year being gone, I remember him asking me, "Can they come for the summer?" And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, the mama bear in me didn't want them to go. I'm just gonna be honest. I did not want them to go. I had never been away from my children like that, where they were actually in a totally different state from me for that long and that far. By flight, okay, they were 5 hours away. This is by flight, not to mention that they would be gone for 6 weeks, okay? So, I did have a lot of mixed emotions about it. I was anxious, I was concerned because I felt like them being far away meant that they weren't accessible to me. They weren't going to be, like, within my reach, where if I had to get there, I couldn't do it in 30 minutes. I couldn't get in a car and get there in a few hours. Like, it would really take me 5 hours by flight minimum to get there. What if my daughter needs me? This is the stuff I'm thinking in my head. What if my daughter needs me? What if my son needs me? What if they're scared and wanna come home? They were still small, and I was their primary custodial parent. However, even though the mama bear in me didn't want to go, I had to tame that mama bear. I did. I had to tame my mama bear because although my natural motherly instinct didn't want them away from me, I couldn't allow my feelings to get in the way of the focus. Okay. And the focus was our children. Now, let me just be honest with y'all because I need for y'all to get this part, right? This current version of me was nowhere near in 2012, meaning that this Tanya right here, she was nowhere near this woman back in 2012. If you've been following me, one of the things that I talk about a lot is me starting this journey back in 2015 of my own personal growth and development, me divorcing my story. So back in 2012, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have any level of self awareness. I wasn't even trying to do any of that. So where I am now was nowhere near that woman back then. And so to be honest, I still had a lot of residue within me from our divorce. I did. And by this time, we were divorced 2 years. And I know most people think if y'all weren't together 2 years, you should have healed and moved on. But again, I wasn't doing any healing work. And one of the things I always talk about is time alone doesn't heal. It's a component to your healing, but that can't be the only measurement. There has to be something active and intentional in place for that transformation to happen. And that's not where I was. And also, it wasn't even about me wanting the marriage back. And I want to put that out there too. It was just the fact that I had never allowed myself to fully unpack what I never dealt with. And I wasn't conscious enough to know how it truly left me at that time. And so in 2012, by this time, he was already remarried. He remarried maybe 6 months after we got divorced. They were on their second child. And not to mention, he moved far away from our children. And so I wanted to share just a little bit of a backstory briefly because I mentioned that I couldn't let my feelings get in the way of my focus. I couldn't. And despite of all what was going on within me, the focus still needed to be them. That was just the right thing to do. And so I said yes to them going. I did. I said yes to them going. and I flew with them up there. I know you can get an assistant because they're underage, but didn't want that. I'm getting on this plane, all right? And when they left with their dad, I'm not gonna lie, I broke down crying. I did. I really did at the airport. And I called my cousin and she stayed on the phone with me. She didn't say much because it wasn't nothing to really say. She was just really supportive. And when I got home, I called them. I remember me calling them. And I still remember how happy they were being there. And that made me feel good. It did. It made me feel really good. And when that's the end result, well, you did the right thing. And I'm sharing this because for some of you, your kids will be with the other parent over the summer. Okay. And summers tend to be more flexible in terms of kids spending time with the other parent. And this is and for some of you, this could be a new experience. For others, it may be existing for you and can still be concerning, right? Maybe you've never been away from your children. Maybe you're navigating on how to transition from managing the relationship you all had once together versus the relationship you now have as parents. Maybe you're concerned on the safety, the well being, the routine, and the structure of the other home. Maybe you're anxious about how they're going to be when they return home, right? Because the other home may have different habits, different rules. So they may develop some habits, may cultivate some attitudes versus what has been taught in your home, right? Maybe you feel a sense of sadness because they will have shared experiences with the other parent that you won't necessarily be a part of. So you may feel excluded from that. Maybe you feel that there may be some potential conflict with the non-custodial parent, or maybe even that person's new partner, right? Because they can be another relationship, or it can be the new partner's kids from a previous relationship to even the kids that they actually may have together. So there's a lot of different variables with that. Maybe you're concerned about the emotional impact. Like, how will the children manage being away from their usual environment? And how supportive will that other parent be? Will they be able to give that level of emotional support and comfort as you would? Maybe you could be concerned about, is this other parent going to be responsible enough to manage anything health related, maybe like allergies or any medications properly, things along those lines. And all of those are normal concerns to have. They are when you're the primary custodial parent. And here's another thing I want to add to. I'm very aware that there are various dynamics when it comes to the relationship of parents who are no longer together and the children that they share. There are many situations and scenarios that we can really run. Okay. However, in this particular episode, I want to share 5 tips to help ease that adjustment for yourself and your kids when they're with the other parent for the summer. And when it comes to these 5 tips, I think maybe all of them, except for the exception of one, can truly fit any situation or scenario. I do. Okay. And so the first tip that I wanted to give in regards to easing the adjustment for yourself and your kids when they go with the other parent for the summer is the first tip I want to give you is to build flexibility when needed to ensure that the kids are the focus. That's the very first one. Build flexibility when needed to ensure that the kids are the focus. When I said yes to my kids going for 6 weeks over the summer, it wasn't initially in our parenting plan. It wasn't because we were both living in the state of Georgia 2 years after the divorce was final. So the frequency of them seeing their dad was different. We couldn't have that same frequency considering the new location. And so there was flexibility that I felt the need to build in order to keep them the focus, right? Now, was I in my feelings? Humanly speaking, yes, I was, right? However, the feelings couldn't be the factor on making this decision. It just couldn't be. Now, and here's the thing, because here's my point. Plans change. They just do. In other words, we can't account for every situation that occurs. We can't. Now, does this mean that I liked it? Of course I didn't. Does this mean that I didn't have questions and concerns and frustrations about that move? Of course not. I'm telling y'all, my mom, my cousin, and my closest friends felt a lot of what I was going through because they were my outlet about things that I just had concerns about. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So this wasn't about having no frustrations. It wasn't about me liking it. I can't explain that enough because again, our feelings are valid in terms of us feeling how we feel. But the point is this: I love my kids more than I loved holding on to my own preferences and feelings about the situation. That was really what it boiled down to. And so if there's flexibility that can ensure that the kids are focused and safe, then I would recommend to make adjustments when necessary, no matter how challenging they are, to even no matter how you feel about the other parent. Because here's the thing, when your children can witness both parents being respectful with one another, it helps them. It helps them emotionally, socially, and academically. And if we are making the kids the center, then we have to be willing to adapt and compromise. So, in other words, we can't lead with our pride. We can't lead with our ego. We can't lead with wanting to make the other parent suffer because in the end, it only hurts your kids, right? Now, earlier I said that one of these points may not fit any situation and scenario. Remember I said that? This is the point. This may be the one. This may can't fit every situation and scenario in terms of flexibility because there are just some dynamics where flexibility outside of the parenting plan isn't in the best benefit of the child. It isn't. And so this is where you want to consider legally modifying the existing agreement to ensure that all parties involved are on one accord. Okay. And so I want to put that out there because I do understand that some people just don't have that. It just wouldn't be in the best interest to be flexible like that. And that can be for various reasons. Okay. And so that's the very first one. The first thing I recommend you do is to build flexibility when needed to ensure that the kids are the focus. All right. The second tip that I want to give you to help ease the adjustment for yourself and your kids when they're with the other parent for the summer is to keep your emotions in check. That's the second one. The second one is to keep your emotions in check. Okay, so here's the thing. When your kids are with you the majority of the time, it's natural for them to feel somewhat out of place when going to the other parent's house. Okay. And that can be for a lot of reasons. Okay. However, the bottom line is that they're away from their comfort zone. Okay. They're away from their normal. They're away from their routine, their environment, their rules, the house rules, the friends. So there's some adjusting on their part that they have to do, which is challenging for them. Okay. And so being the parent that they need in those moments are crucial. They are. So it's important to be more encouraging about them going over the other parent's house than discouraging. It's important to not make them feel like they have to choose between you and the other parent. It's important to manage your feelings in a way so that when they leave, they don't feel guilty leaving you. It's important to avoid talking down about the other parent. It's important to be more supportive of their relationship with the other parent. It's important to lead with understanding and empathy to their feelings and experiences. And it's also important to give them that reassurance that their time with the other parent is equally important, okay? Because when you are the custodial parent, your influence impacts how your kids feel about the situation. So, in other words, your attitude and your approach helps shape their perception. So, the more positive support we show them, this can help them feel more secure and loved by both of you. It can help them adjust and transition between homes much easier. It can help them develop a healthier relationship with both parents. And in the long run, this will help your kids thrive mentally, emotionally, socially, and academically. You want to be a safe space. You really do. And if there are things that you are unable to navigate, then who else can you pull from your network that can be a healthy resource to help them in a way that supports their well being? Maybe it's somebody who had a similar experience in terms of navigating that co parenting piece and they did it successfully. Maybe you can reach out to them and ask them for some support and advice. Maybe there's a therapist that you can get for your child so they can help navigate these things and for you to have these healthier conversations. And also parenting coaches. There are parenting coaches out here. There are podcasts out here that is geared towards co-parenting. And so there are resources available, right? But this point here is really about saying, hey, I need to be able to manage my emotions intelligently so that way I can be who my child needs in that moment. All right. So that's the second tip. The second tip that I recommend is to keep your emotions in check. All right. And so the third tip that I want to give you to help ease the adjustment for yourself and your kids when they're at the other parent's house over the summer is to be respectful of their time with the other parent. Be respectful of their time with the other parent. And the last point, I discussed being supportive, right? That was one of the things I talked about. And giving them the space to bond with the other parent is a way of displaying that. Okay. So, what does this mean? This means that although it's normal to want to call all day, every day, let's take more of a balanced approach when contacting them. Okay. Maybe you all can make arrangements on days and times that would be good. Okay. If your kids are much smaller, they may need like a different call frequency than maybe teenagers. Okay. And as well as the different types of calls. So younger kids may need more of a video call, more of a phone call where teenagers, all they want to do is text. Okay. They may FaceTime you depending on how they feel, but you get my point, right? Let's respect the time that they're having with the other parent. And here's another thing, if they don't respond right away, okay, that doesn't mean something's wrong. It doesn't mean something's wrong. We don't want to react or think the worst of things because if you do that, it's not going to be a good experience for your kids, you, as well as the other parent. All right. And so that's the third tip that I want to give you. The third tip is to really be respectful of their time with the other parent. The fourth tip to help ease the adjustment when the kids are going with the other parent over the summer is to plan and communicate with the other parent on logistics. Okay, that's the fourth one. Plan and communicate with the other parent on logistics. And when I'm speaking of logistics, I'm speaking of maybe the time frame on when they're going and when they're coming back. Will anyone else be watching them while they're in the other parent's care? Like any other family members? Are they going to be going to a camp? Is there going to be a in-home babysitter? And making sure that you have those additional methods of contact, updating them and planning about any allergies or medications that they have to take. Will they be going out of town? If they're going like maybe on a family vacation, something of that nature, updating them on any changes, such as any developmental details that the other parent needs to know. I would also say share with them maybe any rules, limits, and responsibilities that you feel is significant to them doing while they're with them during the summer. Now, here's the thing. When communicating rules, limits, and responsibilities that you feel is significant, here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to communicate that in a way to control how the other parent runs their home, right? I would recommend to just explain the significance of it and why it's important for the child. Not you, but for the child. So when it comes to someone else's house and their rules, we can't necessarily insist that they adopt maybe your approach or even your rules. You can only suggest what has worked best. And I would just leave it at that. But here's what I will say. When parents are collaborative, it does present a unified front to your children versus a combative one. And so being able to say, hey, there are some things that we probably can be in agreement with when it comes to our child so that they know that we're in this together for their best well-being and their quality of life. When it starts to become combative, then it can cause all other kinds of issues, okay? And so that's the fourth tip that I would recommend. It's just planning the logistics, communicate them so that way the other parent and you all can be on one accord. That will help ease the adjustment, okay? So the fifth and final tip that I want to give you on easing the adjustment is, and this is for the primary custodial parent, okay? Here's what I want you to do. When they are gone with the other parent, I want you to use this time to recharge. That's the fifth one. The fifth one is to use this time to recharge, okay? When my kids left for the summer that year for the first time in 2012, I didn't realize how much I did until I actually just stopped doing it, until I just really slowed down. And when the kids were gone for the summer, it allowed me to see the importance of changing the pace. It did. It allowed me to see the importance of slowing down. It helped me reconnect with myself. It allowed me to enjoy my solitude. I got a lot of rest, y'all. I'm not even gonna lie, I did. I don't even recall cooking one time when they were with their dad. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I don't think I touched that stove, right? I went to the movies. I hung out with my friends. I took a few vacations. I even took a couple of staycations, right? I even got some things done around the house that I just didn't get a chance to do before. And I want you to think, for my parents who kids are going to be away, I want you to ask yourself, how can I take advantage of this time? What self-care activities that you've always wanted to do? What places do you want to go visit? What hobbies or interests have been set aside that you want to revisit? I want you to give yourself unapologetic permission and enjoy the time that you have on your own. And why is this important? Because when your kids return, I know you all will be excited. You'll be glad to see them because you miss them. It's also important for them to see a well recharged parent. It is. It's good for them to see a well recharged parent. Not to mention that this actually makes them feel good to see that you enjoyed your time. Kids really do like seeing their parents happy. They do. And also, this is important because you'll be back to your routine with them from school, their activities, their appointments. You know how it is. It's so many different components of being a parent, right? It's a very multifaceted role. And so enjoy this time to recharge while you can, you know? Please do that. You may have some feelings of anxiety while they're gone. You may also feel somewhat guilty. However, remember that taking care of yourself ultimately benefits both you and your children. It does. And so those are the 5 tips that I recommend to help ease this adjustment when your kids go with the other parent for the summer. And one thing I want to add before we close out is when it comes to someone you were once with that you still have to have a relationship with because you all have kids, it takes a while to reestablish a different relationship. However, the more we do our work, which is why I talk about that so much on the podcast, the more we do our work, the better you are in navigating these dynamics more effectively. It's just the byproduct of doing your work. You show up differently. You really get more and more intentional on making sure that your kids are the focus. You know how to manage conversations more effectively. And in the end, it benefits the children the most when they can see their parents get along, when they can see their parents make them be the focus, it helps them thrive. All right. And so please make sure that you're following me on my social media handles. My Instagram is I am Tanya Carter. My Facebook is Tanya Carter. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the like and the subscribe button as well. And also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you can receive notifications on when the next podcast will drop. And also leave a review. If you know that this podcast has been very influential for you in terms of your growth and your development, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And last but not least, share this information. If you know that there's a parent who could be having difficulty navigating that summer transition with their kids being with the other parent, then share this podcast episode with them so that it may be a benefit for them. Okay. So thank you all again for tuning in with me this week. You all have a wonderful and an amazing week, and I will see you next time.